When I was a newly ordained priest, I was asked by my brothers to pick up some supplies for a birthday party. Others were handling the main part of the meal, but my task was essential. I had to pick up chocolate cake and beer. I was in the checkout line, in a cassock no less, when I heard the of someone behind me. I turned around and asked if I could help her. This southern gentlewoman said to me in a beautiful accent, "You, a man of the cloth, you should be ashamed of yourself. Chocolate cake and beer." I smiled and asked her if she had ever read Genesis. She retorted that she had. I asked her what God had said when He created. I went ahead and answered for her. He said that it was good. Everything He created, He would finish by saying, "It is good." And then I said, and if they'd have had enough paper, they would have eventually have written down, chocolate cake and beer is good. Creation in itself is good. In this session, we will speak about the goodness of creation, the very goodness of creation, as God said when He looked upon His crowning creation as male and female. We will explore together the sacrament of matrimony. It seems fitting to discuss sacramental marriage at this juncture, since it is an image of what takes place in the one flesh union of the Holy Eucharist. I highlight sacramental marriage because this union is first a natural reality before it becomes a supernatural one. Even after the fall, marriage remained a natural sign of something for which we could not have hoped, which is namely God's marriage with His people. It was created very good. Marriage remained very good, but it was about to become better. Confusion now swirls around this natural institution, perhaps more than ever. We do not normally have confusion about other natural realities. No one says that we should no longer sleep, eat, or drink, that those activities were part of an ignorant past, and we, the enlightened, are of the present, and thus have no further use for such conventions. Sex now has nothing to do with gender, and gender has nothing to do with sex. Neither seem to have anything to do with biology. How did we get here? The answer is sin. It's an unpopular answer. Yet what happens with sin is confusion. In a darkened mind, we distort reality, warping it to our own desires. Part of the good news that the gospel brings is the truth even about the human person. This truth is that God has made the human person male and female. They were willed by Him as such. And once united, they must not be divided. When Christ is questioned about the licéity of divorce in the 19th chapter of Matthew, He states very clearly that in the beginning it was not so. How was it in the beginning? How did He design us? How did He make us? To what end and for what purpose? Christ's use of the words "in the beginning" brings us back to Genesis. Only Christ as the new Adam can walk across the bridge of time and give us a glimpse into the Creator's beautiful handiwork before it was distorted by sin. As noted, each time God creates, He seems to rest in the contemplation of his work by pronouncing it good. Goodness is that which is desirable. Goodness is that which achieves the end for which a thing was made. All things, insofar as they exist, are good. Evil, which classically is defined as a privation or an absence of a good that should be present, has not yet entered into history. Man, he proclaims, is very good. But why does he create them male and female? Why have these bodies which manifest this differentiation? You cannot say that it was solely for reproduction, because he could have made us otherwise. In the second creation account, the man is created, but it is not good for him to be alone. Why not? If we are in the image and likeness of God, and God himself is a communion of persons, not a solitude, we too are made for the purpose of communion. Differentiation was meant to draw us into union by virtue of the complementarity of the sexes. This means that the other must be equal but different. The animals are brought forth to the man in the creation account, but not one animal is sufficient for him. Never did the man stare into the eyes of an aardvark and cry, "At last." Genesis is attempting to teach us that nothing up to this point is man's equal. So God casts a deep sleep over the man. And this sleep is a kind of death. When we sleep, we lose control. It is in some sense a preparation for our death, like a dress rehearsal. This gift of life, the life that the man himself was given by God, would require a kind of death. In other words, God would take from him in this sleep-like death the life that he had given to him and give it to another. In this slumber, God takes from him a rib. Have you ever wondered why a rib? I have asked this question on many occasions to couples who are preparing for holy matrimony. Most women say, because it's close to the heart. Most men say, because he has many to spare. Whatever the case, it seems that the word rib is also a play in Hebrew on the word for life. This woman who is to be built up must have what the man has, must be his equal. The man has something similar to the very life of God, his spirit. For this woman to be like the man, the gift of his life is required. From this life, God will build up the woman. The man, in turn, will follow the path that the rib took by giving his life precisely where the life was given, the woman. Upon awakening from his death sleep, he follows the trail of where his life had gone and will live in service to the woman. When God brings the woman to the man, we hear the first exclamation of joy in creation. We can hear the burden of time and solitude in his voice. At last. He was waiting. He was longing. He was to be a person in communion. The woman didn't have to speak a word because Adam saw what she was. He saw her body. There was no need of extensive research into the equality of the sexes, nor a course on gender studies. Her body and his were complementary. Of course, he did not see only her body. It was after the fall that they realized that they were naked, where vision stops at the border of the flesh. What this means is that originally there was innocence. This type of innocence is not that of children. This is not the shamelessness of adults who have forsaken innocence in a show of liberation and empowerment. Shamelessness is not liberty. It is a sign that one's reason sees nothing worth protecting, sees nothing good worth treasuring, as a gift to be given, and not one that is taken. They were innocent because they had no sin, no interior chaos or disorder. Pope St. John Paul II called this innocence the tranquility of the interior gaze. It is peace. They didn't need to be afraid or ashamed. There was literally nothing to hide. There was only the simple marveling in their existence, in the existence of the other. This, as Joseph Pieper once noted, is the first movement of rational love, the statement exchanged by their gaze, which said to the other, "It is good that you are here." The first command Adam and Eve received was to be fruitful and multiply. Their very complementarity made the nuptial meaning of their bodies capable of self-donation, a kind of donation which would result in fruitfulness. It is a kind of sacrament in which that which is sensible signifies that which is, or should be, suprasensible, meaning interior communion. The twofold end of this act is life and love, but not only with the couple. How often we forget that the act of conjugal life involves more than two persons. We properly call it procreation, as the couple participates in the creative activity of God. For life to be created, a soul created comes forth from God at the moment of conception. It is a creation ex nihilo, out of nothing. Imagine, if you will, that at some point, when the conjugal act is finished, the Lord and giver of life overshadows the woman and gives her life. Two in a room become three. The only one who knows that a new person exists at first is God. And he always finds that life very good. Christ has raised the natural reality of marriage to the level of a sacrament. It now becomes a sign of Christ and his church. Reciprocal self-donation began with Jesus, the new Adam, giving his life to us, his fullness of life from the cross. His pierced side now flows to us who would receive him at the base of the cross, participating in self-donating love unto a consummate union. Making them male and female reaches into the highest level of a sign. Female is a sign to the male, love here. Male is a sign to the female, love here. The idea of the gift is inscribed into our flesh. The body has a nuptial meaning. Christ is man. The church, in her turn, indeed every soul, is spoken of mystically as feminine. Each soul must allow his death for us, admit his death for us, receive the fruit of his death for us. But this donation does not stop at the level of his gift. We are not barren fig trees. We are meant to receive, to gestate grace, and bring it forth in abundant fruit. The goods of marriage are therefore quite easy to see. St. Augustine first articulated them as the good of chaste fidelity, the good of children, and the good of an indissoluble bond. Chastity restores man. It gives him the capacity to possess himself so as to be able to make a sincere gift of himself. Christ has come to restore men and women to their nobility, such that they will not even look upon another with lust. He goes down into man's heart, drills down to where donation has been warped into a gift not of self, but to self. And he transforms it to make it possible once again for one to give themselves away. He unbends man, coiled as he is on himself, locked in a self-embrace of futility, and opens him up for love of another. The second good, that of children, demands conversion of heart. If the first takes place, the couple is then free to share their love. Love breaks the borders of both their individuality as well of their singular union. Goodness is diffusive of itself. If love is allowed to live and to grow, it necessarily overflows the banks, the borders of their personality in blessings to others. Love becomes incarnate in children, born from the chaste and confident fidelity of the donation of spouses. Finally, since all this requires combat and self-mastery, a bondage forged by God, the links of which no human tribunal can break. A vow, G.K. Chesterton once quipped, is not made for the moment in which it is taken. Rather, it's made for a moment in the future, when it will be needed, when suffering comes. It is a glorious adventure, not made by the faint of heart, but for those willing to donate their lives. What seems to be restricting human freedom proves, in fact, to be the opening of true freedom and adventure. The circumference of a wedding ring is narrow, but once the finger is through, infinite possibilities open up, and the hand clasps around the others, as together they stare into a future of promise and providence. Marriage is a natural institution.